Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Mandy, and this is Love Sober,
the podcast for the sober and sober curious.
Hi, and welcome back to Love Sober, the podcast for the sober and sober curious. And today it's me, Kate, and I'm super delighted to be joined by a dear sober sister and friend, Nancy, who is the sober loving radical. You might know her as on Instagram and TikTok. She is what did we say you were? You're a sober life activist, I think is one of the best ways to put it. It's like you're so out and proud and encouraging and really support a lot of people, and I don't know, just walking the walk and talking the talk and doing it all fabulously.
Oh, thank you, darling. What a lovely introduction.
So yeah, really, really pleased to talk to Nancy and dive into her story a bit, and also talk a bit about, I don't know, just have a bit of a chat about being women, about being mums, about what's going on at the moment in terms of life. Pandemic still bloody hanging around, this run up to Christmas, and kind of all the things. It's almost like all the elements that are putting pressure on us as women, I think, in our sobriety, what we're longing for, and maybe how do we think we might get it. So cutting through the noise and seeing how we might actually meet our needs, actually get to meet our needs, and this craziness that there is at the moment. So hi Nancy, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Kate. Yeah, hanging on in there. I was feeling good, and then got cursed with one of my hormonal headaches this morning. I seem to get at least one or two a month, which is part of the whole shift in hormones, I think. But I've got my herbal tea, and I've knocked back some paracetamol, so I'm hoping it's going to wear off as we chat. And yeah, I mean, I'm generally okay, but life does feel difficult at the moment, for various reasons. And I'm just trying to be very compassionate and gentle with myself, I suppose.
Hearing you loud and clear. I mean, we've I think we met at a kind of get together that I think Mandy put together,
Yes.
in her amazing networking, bringing people together, skills that she's so good at.
Yeah.
And we met a few years back. And then we found out we've got quite a lot in common, haven't we? And a lot of things that you say to me really resonate with me. The sort of the squeezed mum thing, the sort of the hormonal perimenopause into menopause stuff, and obviously the sobriety stuff, and similarities in terms of our families as well. We've got that neurodiverse piece.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I'm hearing you on all of that. It's kind of a lot. And I just wonder, I feel the same. I've not got a headache, but I'm not sleeping very well. And you said to me, oh, why is that? And I was like, well, I think it's menopause. So we got our little menopause chat out the way before we came on air. And now I'm like, let's talk about the menopause again. And we were also talking, weren't we, about kind of being kind of frazzled, burnt out, distracted, and trying to get some kind of genuine connection. So we were trying to tease it out, weren't we, over the last couple of weeks, I think. But so we're going to dive into all of that. But if we could start off, anyone who's listening in who doesn't know you and who hasn't seen all I just love your TikToks, they're bloody great. You really have to check out Nancy, So Loving Radical, on TikTok. But yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about your drinking story and how you came to be alcohol free.
Okay, yeah. My drinking started probably like many people of my generation in the UK. Actually, when I was about 14, I started hanging out with a group of older friends. And in those days, I could get away with being in a pub as long as one of the taller lads went up to the bar and bought the drinks. And it started off in earnest. I was drinking like neat vodka. Not all the time, just like weekends. And it felt like fun and being a bit wild and being rebellious, but actually it's also what was modeled to me. You know, my mum, it's what I saw. I saw drinking, I saw parties, I saw a bit of hedonism at home. And that sort of came and went throughout my teens. It wasn't really a problem into my 20s, mid 20s. I really started then experimenting with recreational drugs and the rave scene and festivals and party going. And again, it was that era in the 90s where it was all about keeping up with the lads, you know, drinking pints down the pub and ladette culture and all of that. And it really felt like it had become my personality. And that was all okay until I fell in love with my husband and we got married and I started thinking about wanting to have children. The first thing to tackle was recreational drug use, which we both knocked on the head. And that wasn't too difficult. But then once we'd had our first son and then our second son quite quickly, they were 21 months apart, I was really escaping motherhood by drinking. And when you start drinking at home, something shifts. It's not about it being fun anymore. It was about it being an escape from the stress and the overwhelm and feeling like I didn't know what the hell I was doing, feeling unsupported. And I had like my mum trying to give me support, but in a way that didn't align with my gut and my values. You know, that old fashioned thing of he's only crying for attention, put the pram out in the garden and ignore him. And somewhere deep inside of me, that didn't feel right. So there was conflict there with that. It's really the only kind of support that I had access to was my mum. And I just don't think I coped with it very well. I felt like I was failing. I felt like I wasn't getting it right. And I felt lonely and I drank in the evenings to escape. And very quickly, it just didn't feel right. So I fell into that trap of trying to control it, trying to moderate, making up the rules. You know, we won't drink midweek. We'd start on a Friday night. And then it got to the point where it was a little gin and tonic on a Saturday lunchtime, and then more Saturday evening, then wine with Sunday lunch, and then more on Sunday evening. And we would manage to not drink Monday and Tuesday, and that classic midweek, you know, when your body is really beginning to detox the alcohol, the cravings became overwhelming, and I would, you know, make an excuse like, oh, come on, we're having spaghetti bolognese, you've got to have red wine with spaghetti bolognese. You know, the excuses would come in. And Kate, that went on for about 13 years. And it ground me down. And I got to the point of just feeling so flat and like there was no real joy or pleasure with anything in life unless alcohol was involved. And I became aware that there was like a greediness around alcohol with myself that I didn't like. I didn't like the look of it. If I was out and someone bought me a drink and it was a single gin and tonic, and I'm, you know, so used to home measures, strong drinks, I would feel a little bit hard done by and sometimes go up to the bar and ask for another shot to be put in my drink. And something suddenly just made me feel like it was ugly, like it had really soured. And then just one day I was talking to a friend of mine. I didn't know her socially. Our children, we both home educate and our kids did football together. And she just randomly told me in a light-hearted way that she hadn't had a drink for 2 years. She'd decided to stop, not because she particularly had a problem. She had her drinking habit was maybe a beer or two an evening. But that taste of freedom, that just the possibility that she presented to me, I suddenly longed for it. I just thought, oh my God, like it suddenly occurred to me. It's the first time the penny dropped that you could not do this thing, that you could just choose not to drink. And it just hadn't occurred to me before, because it was such a huge part of my life. And at a similar time, I was bought a bottle of gin for my birthday and a card that said something like "Have a gin-tastic birthday" on it from my sister. And, you know, it was a lovely thought, because at the time I did love drinking gin, but it was like a sudden wake-up call, like, oh my God, this has become my identity. So I decided that I was going to stop. Like, I wanted to feel that freedom, and I knew that the only way I could achieve that was by burning all my bridges. So I said to my husband, because we had always enabled each other's bad habits, I said, I'm never going to drink again, and I'm absolutely certain this is the right choice. You don't have to join me. All I ask is that you just support me and don't offer me drinks and don't try and encourage me, but this is something I have to do. And very quickly announced it on Facebook. And I think I shared Claire Pooley's TED Talk. So I kind of outed myself very early on as a means of accountability. And that was it. And it's I know it's a very rare thing, but I didn't have another drink after that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You were ready. That was it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I say to a lot of people that contact me, it's not a linear journey. You know, people do have to stop and start. And it may have looked that way for me, but I had 13 years of trying to control it.
Yeah, you'd had that sort of back and forward sort of thing going on.
The cognitive dissonance of both wanting to drink and not wanting to drink for such a long period of time.
Yeah, I really relate to that. I've just, some of the things you've talked about, I mean, the thing that's occurring to me is your story is such a brilliant pre-Christmas tale. It's such, for people listening in who might be just thinking, well, maybe I will for Christmas, maybe it's fine. The reality, the kind of stark reality of how you explain it in terms of that kind of, the kind of trying to moderate it, setting the rules around it, the underlying deep sadness that you get when you're a mom, you know, and you're going through that rite of passage to, you know, who the fuck am I? What the fuck happened? Sort of situation, a break. And interestingly, you know, we're going through perimenopause, menopause. That's another time when that can come up. But also that kind of, and I love what you said about that kind of knowing deep down there was a kind of a greed there, and it was more than just, oh, I just fancy a drink. You know, when that, and you're going, looking outside, is it normal? Isn't it normal? But actually, if we are honest, I think everyone who knows kind of knows and recognizes that greed, that kind of never enoughness. And that's such a brilliant kind of little red flag to point you to go, okay, that's, and then I absolutely love what you said about, you know, and it's almost like all the stars aligned, you know, you saw the alcohol marketing, you were given permission, you saw it as a possibility, you know, and it was your time. Well done.
Thank you. It's the best thing that I have ever done. Without a doubt. I mean, God knows where I would be now if I had carried on down that line.
And how long is it now? 2-3 years?
It will be 4 years in April 2022. Yeah, the year I turned 50.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So what sort of groups and resources helped you when you started out?
Well, it's funny you should say that, Kate, because the Love Sober podcast was...
No.
Yeah. Every day I'd walk my dogs and I would listen to one of your podcasts and one of Annie Grace's, This Naked Mind. And being neurodiverse myself, my ADHD, I really struggle to read and to absorb information. Like I can read small bits of facts like reference and I can take it on board, but reading a whole book is a struggle. So listening, like I have an Audible account, that's how I take in all my books now. And podcasts, that was new to me back then. That was when I first started listening to podcasts, and I just loved it. Listening to you and Mandy, it was just suddenly like, oh my God, there's people speaking my language, I'm not alone. And that is the very first time I had felt like that. And I knew that going to meetings or doing the 12-step program, just it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like the right fit. I was somewhere in between being at rock bottom and being a very occasional drinker. And at the time I didn't know what that was. I didn't know there was a place for me. And I think your podcast gave me that place. And then Annie's podcast gave me some of the science that let it really sink in. And then I decided to, I wanted to journal about it, but written was not the right format for me. So I created an anonymous Instagram account. And I don't know how long it took for me to go public with that. Maybe 4 or 5 months. I think I eventually started, my own name crept in. But at first it was just anonymous. And I just post something every day and connect with other people and did my day count. And I had an app. I think it's I Am Sober, that keeps track of your days.
Yeah.
And those were my tools in the early days. Podcasts and Instagram, I think.
Well, yeah, and interestingly, I'm hearing it from the science when I was thinking about, the fact that the podcast gave you that feeling of not being alone. So there's that connection. Annie's doing the brain stuff, so we're getting good quality information. So it's the both sides of the brain, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I love that sort of, and then tracking progress, because that's another real proven way to affect habit change, to really solidify habit change. So actually, isn't it interesting that we kind of often know what we need?
Yes. Yeah,
and we're doing that, aren't we? What keeps glimmering up to me as well is that thing about connection. And I know that this has come onto the radar at the moment, hasn't it? We were talking the other day about how to support ourselves and what's going on. And we were talking about this because we've relied on sort of social media, we've relied on Zoom, we've relied on technology. And you were sort of talking about that kind of almost the cross addiction that can come out of that. And so I'm quite interested to sort of unpick that a bit, because obviously it's been really important to you. So I'm wondering why has that come up? Talk to us about that.
It started, I've always, had this thing with my phone since I stopped drinking. No, actually, that's not true, because actually, when I was first a parent, I first discovered Facebook when my eldest 2 kids were toddlers, and it was another form of escape. Yes, it gave me connection, but it also took me away from the present moment. And I've realized that I still fall into that trap. And I've been reading In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts by Gabor Mate, a book about addiction. And, you know, he starts off with drug addiction, but then moves through. And then I was reading the chapters on behavioral addiction, and wondering if, you know, I kind of fall into that category. And addiction might be a strong word, but it is definitely a habit that can be unhealthy. And every Monday at the moment, I drive to London and I care for my mum who has Alzheimer's. And it's emotionally draining, and it's difficult. And then I became aware that every Tuesday, I couldn't focus on anything. And I would say, I'm going to go and walk the dogs, for example. And then before I knew it, I would be making a TikTok video or scrolling on Instagram. And my dogs are sniffing at my bedroom door and scratching. And all of a sudden it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and they've not been walked. And I haven't done the laundry and I've got no idea what we're having for dinner. So yeah, that's it. It's just me trying to bring my newfound conscious awareness to my habits and work out, what am I actually doing here? How much is this connection healthy, and how much is it taking me away from my real life connections with my children and, you know, my family? And trying to get that balance at the moment is really difficult.
Yeah.
And partly, I think, at the beginning of COVID, with the first lockdown, I really struggled to maintain my real life friendships online, like the women that I would normally see. You know, I used to go to a natural voice choir, which was like singing for therapy rather than for performance. And it was such a great means of support. And then that went on to Zoom, and I tried 1 or 2 of those over Zoom, and I just couldn't do it. So what I did was I retreated from all my real life friendships, and I didn't maintain them through the lockdowns and over the last couple of years, and instead switched to connecting with strangers on TikTok and Instagram and finding a different kind of support that way. But I think it has left me floundering a little bit, like with the real life stuff, with the hugs, with the real face to face, with the feeling of being part of something outside of my family unit.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate to you saying that. And I felt well, when it first kicked in, when the first lockdown happened, I had this kind of almost well, not a sense of relief. It sounds absolutely awful when you're talking about it, but it was like everyone joined me on Zoom for the first time, and so I didn't feel so odd. And then it was just like you say, there's something about, I think it's that, what you said about that balance, isn't it? For many of us, we do, you know, in the sober sphere, we do our first connections are online.
Yeah.
And somehow there is always that tinkering around with that balance, I think, when your new sober friends, when you're trying to make your new sober friends, you're trying to change your life to an alcohol-free one, and you get that sort of shifting around of your social groups in real life. And there's definitely something that happens there. I remember it myself going, oh my goodness, I'm not sure I'm like online or in real life. And then it happened to everyone because of the pandemic. And I do feel like there's that, I really relate to what you said about having that almost thirst for feet on the ground, hands in the mud, face to face in real life, hearing your heartbeat kind of connection with other people and other women. And then there's that sort of fear because we're out of practice. It's like, I don't even know what the rules kind of are anymore. Are we hugging? Are we doing an elbow? How long can I actually cope with this? I'm still thinking maybe an hour and a half max. Do you know what I mean? And we're not out of it yet, are we? We're still all
and
so
with the in and out of lockdowns, our home ed life, like none of the groups, like we couldn't get any continuity, with the singing, we couldn't really do that indoors. And so we have become quite isolated from real life gatherings, communing with other women. And when you have children, well, for me and maybe for school mums as well, it's just small moments, just small moments of connection when you're waiting for your kids, just a little chat. And there is so much that you gain from that.
As you were talking, I had written down micro connections. I was thinking about how we can, when we're still in this weird kind of liminal no man's land of not quite sure what we're doing, what can we do? And those micro connections to see wherever they are around you, like trying to have that little eye contact with that person along the street and say good morning to them, spend a bit of time chatting while you're having your shopping, while you're doing your shopping. And they're not quite the same, but at least there's something there. They are actually connecting. They're scientifically proven, aren't they, to boost well-being. I see them as like that, a little tiny little web. It's feeling quite fragile at the moment, but it's still there, and I can still see the little dots of rain on the little spider's web if I go and have a really good look and I properly turn towards them or something.
Yes, yeah. It's just leaning into those moments wherever you can, and and realizing that they give you something. It's an exchange. It's a moment. It's not the same, but I think it might be a while yet before we get back to, I don't know. I don't want to think about that. Like, how long we're going to be
Christmas.
in and out of all of this COVID stuff, but
I think it's I really appreciate you talking about it and us being able to have this conversation like a real, not like a false, like, right, let's talk about how to socialize at Christmas. I mean, that's all important, we've done it, but this feels like we are like I say, coming out of these couple of years ish maybe of lockdown. We're all feeling depleted. We're looking for those connections, many of us, but in manageable ways. It has such a big tie-in with the sober conversation anyway. We have some triggers there, don't we? We have our tiredness being depleted. We may have loneliness being another drinking trigger. The other thing that I think is really important, not to just get blown away by, the bright false lights of Christmas, or the fact that we can't even have the bright false lights of Christmas, is this idea we were talking a bit about before about wintering. And it turned out that we were both reading, how weird is this? We are both at the moment reading a fantastic book by Catherine May called Wintering. And it is so pertinent. It is so relevant for now. And so this idea of wintering being, well, there's some practical elements, aren't there? There's some emotional elements, and it's quite kind of almost a spiritual look at embracing the dark, embracing the ebb, and the kind of the dark, deep wisdom of the winter. And sometimes winters are thrust upon us. That's what I've picked up so far. Sometimes we slide into a winter. Sometimes some life impact happens. We're thrust into a winter, our own personal winters. But they can be deep times of kind of beauty, learning self-compassion, and communing with ourselves and finding out what we really need. This is what I'm picking up from the book. So with that in mind, what's your take on this idea of wintering as a kind of uber seasonal self-care approach, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the actual season, you know, this winter coming up, it's made me realize and want to prioritize more spaciousness and ease and taking off the stress and crossing things out and not worrying that things aren't perfect. You know, we're not doing turkey this year, for example. We're just, because my husband and I are both depleted, him from work and me from like emotional stuff. So, and it's a classic time where he and I have fallen out, and you know, these sort of horrible, pointless, ugly arguments that come out of stress. So we both got together last week and just had a really good chat and just said, let's just make this as easy for each other as possible. And yeah, so there's that in terms of, you know, the coming festive season. And then the other thing for me is this time in my life. I mean, midlife, my mum's decline with Alzheimer's, the sudden loss of my dad in November, and I have withdrawn from other areas in my life. I have withdrawn from friends and a lot of socializing. And yeah, the book is actually just not just the book. Actually, I had a lovely coaching session and I had a therapy session last week, and I suddenly just thought, shit, I need to slow down. I need to give myself space and time to process and evolve and just be still and give myself grace. You know, realize that this is an in-between, pretty bloody tricky phase in my life.
Yeah.
There is an awful lot going on emotionally because, like you know, I have teenage sons who I'm supporting as well. So you got that on one side and parents on the other, and then us and our crazy hormones and various ailments that brings in between. So this is my personal winter, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
And it happens to have aligned with the winter season that I've just become aware of it. But I think this winter for me, this phase of my life has been going on for a few years. You know, with the toing and froing to London to, you know, take my mum out shopping and prepare meals and, you know, all of that stuff. But that has brought with it lots of deep reflection.
Yeah.
That has taken me back to childhood memories and reflections of, you know, her trauma that my mum has lived with, because it keeps coming up. It's like one of the few things she remembers through her Alzheimer's is her childhood trauma. And that has caused me to reflect on, well, if that's had such a huge impact on you as a person, how's that impacted me? And how have I impacted my children? So there's like the last, since July really, so much deep diving for me emotionally.
Yeah.
And I think I said in my therapy session yesterday, do you know what, I want to just bob up to the surface for a bit.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, you know, more glitter, more disco, more dancing.
Yeah, because that's the antidote, isn't it? That's the balance.
Yes.
And we need, because so I just want to pick up on a few threads, because I very much related to what you said. And this time of year anyway, I think often as a bit of a stick in the, it can be tricky because it's like a stick in the sand. We've done another revolution around the sun, which we do every day, but we don't mark the stick in the sand like we do with high days, holidays, rituals, or whatever. And this idea of being the winter and the winter of our lives going into this kind of craving space for reflection. And I've written, as you were saying it, I was like making little notes. And I totally get that. I think for people out there who aren't going through perimenopause and menopause, this all has all the hallmarks of a huge cultural liminal period, that no man's land where we're neither here nor there. We're not in the throes of the pandemic. We're not out the other side. We don't know. And those are notoriously difficult to emotionally cope with, to process. And when we don't know how to process, when we don't know how to cope, if we're not okay with being all right in that dwelling in the liminal spaces, because that's why we ritualize them, right? That's why we rush from one to the other. Yeah. And we have guides, don't we? We have guides like therapists, we have guides, I don't know, culturally times gone by, like shamans to guide us through thresholds. When we don't do that, we reach for things of comfort, we reach for the phone, we reach for trying to soothe, regulate, numb out, do whatever. So I think it's so pertinent to anyone, bringing it back to the drinking conversation, being frazzled, but this sense that I remember years ago when I first started writing features for the Sunday Express magazine, and I got my first gig writing my own think piece. So it wasn't instead of interviewing someone and writing a case study about them for the paper, which I could be fact checked, it was like my experience and what do I think. It was my first feature, and I remember just feeling like, oh my god, it's just such a load of rubbish. It's like, who would and then I realized after doing it a few times that if I was thinking something and feeling something, everyone else, well, not everyone else, but so many other people would be thinking and feeling like that, because we're in this cultural soup together, no one's an island, and we're all connected and all the rest of it. So I think what you said, and I think also when we go through those times, it can feel intensely personal. So it is personal to you, it is personal to me, it is personal to a listener listening in, but it's really it connects us all as well, because it's sort of a collective suffering and a collective process, right?
I mean, it's global trauma. It is really this whole pandemic thing. And I know from my TikTok account and the people that have been reaching out to me how much drinking has escalated over the last couple of years, and how people are just suddenly floundering and panicking and thinking, how the hell do I get out of this now? And then for the people that already are not drinking, what are the soothing, coping mechanisms?
So you were talking about, I was going to say, you're talking about glitter. How do we light ourselves up in these dark times? It's like, how do we put up our inner fairy lights? How do we light our inner fires at this time of year? How do we soothe ourselves and light ourselves up? What do you do?
Gosh, getting outside, getting outside in nature and walking the dogs. And I'm now trying to do that without listening to an audiobook or a podcast. I'm trying to just actually slow it all down. So being more mindful. So listening to the sounds around me and doing like a bit of a mindfulness walk. And I am trying to do a bit more of that, like guided meditations. I know you've talked a lot in the past about the Tara Brach rain meditation, but I love the smile. Have you done her smile one?
Is it where you place a smile through your body?
Yeah, and then you imagine, the curve of a smile in the blue sky. That's really lovely. There's a 10-minute one. And I try to make it a daily practice, but I'm not very good at sticking to a routine. I'm trying, but Trying to, my movement, I love movement, and at the moment I don't have the energy for dancing, which is a real shame. It does light me up, but I'm finding yoga is hitting that spot for me. What else do I do? Hot water, sinking into a hot tub, which we, really fortunate to have got with the, money that both of us have saved now in our house by not drinking.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's lighting me up. Just thought of that hot tub. It's just such a lovely thing.
It is. It's that same feeling, when you sink into a deep hot bath. That feeling, just letting it all go.
Yeah.
And that, that's my husband when he gets in from work. I might be in the middle of cooking, and he'll say, "How are you doing? Like, can you pause that if you've got 10 minutes just to jump in the hot tub?" And we'll go sink in and then just have a chat and check in with each other. And I have to be careful because sometimes I rattle on, like talk at him intensely for about 10 minutes. And I suddenly realize that, oh, poor man, he's not having a chance to relax here.
You just ruined that hot tub.
But I have given him permission. Like, if you just need to do that on your own, you don't have to invite me.
Oh,
because it's that thing when you're at home all day on your own, unless I've been coaching, sometimes I don't see another adult. I haven't had a chance to talk.
And that's not a kind of a normal interaction, is it? If you're coaching, then you're holding space, you're reflecting. It's not a just a blah 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 blah. Yeah.
So that's big. They're the main things I've got at the moment.
That seems to go with your sort of more like your inner winter as well, isn't it? It's that resting, restoring, sensory stuff. I always say to people, to that's how I light myself up. Sensory toolkit is such a big thing. And I love what you said about Tara Brach as well, that self-compassion is so key. I think self-compassion is a superpower and needs to be taught in schools, and to do this, to help our senses, work with our sensory needs.
Absolutely.
It's so important, isn't it? I love a box set at the moment, anything immersive, a box set to just switch off to.
We've been really into Britannia. Have you seen
No.
Romans?
Okay.
That's
fantasy. Fantasy Roman.
It's like Romans and Druids, and it's sort of historical, fun and entertaining. Really moving.
Wicked. So I know you're doing some great training. So you're a coach in training, and you're doing some amazing sober advocacy work, and just helping people out, and being absolutely amazing. But I know you've got some quite exciting plans for next year, haven't you?
I mean, the two things that I'm sort of working on at the moment in my spare time, one is my website, which is really exciting. I want to get that up and running. Finish my life coaching certificate, which I have, for my own peace of mind and mental health, put on pause for now. Because I've realized I was using that as a bit of a stick to beat myself with, because I had told myself I would have it completed by January, and I'm not on course, and that's okay. This is part of that, bringing ease into my life, letting go of the things that I can let go of. But I have also applied for a course called Compassionate Inquiry, with designed and part led by Gabor Mate. And he's just
so jealous.
An absolute hero of mine at the moment. I just can't get enough of his teachings and reading all of his books. And that just speaks to me so much, because I have a lot of compassion, more so for other people than myself sometimes. But it's like an application. Um, it's not a modality in its own. It goes along with coaching or therapy or counseling. It's a way of applying compassion and conscious awareness, and helping people to understand themselves and reach wholeness, find that place of wholeness, which is work in progress and something I'm working on to feel like a whole and complete person. So that is really exciting. I don't know whether I've sent off my application. I don't know whether I'll be accepted yet. But if I am, that starts in February, and it's
exciting.
quite an intensive course. So I just got to hope that I have got the space for it.
That's nice. You have to come back on when you've done it. Tell us all about Gabor Mate. He's the hero that he is. Well, I'm just aware of the time. We're going to start wrapping up. So, we always finish with, what's your tip of the day and your reason to love sober?
My tip of the day is something that I always come back to, and it is find a way to play, whether that is just taking a moment to dance in the kitchen, or getting a glittery manicure, or spending 20 minutes trying out a different style of eye makeup. It's one of my things. Or learning how to play Minecraft with one of your kids. Just really, getting into that moment and finding whatever it is for you. It might not be the same things for me, but where you forget everything else for a moment and just get that sense of play, because sometimes I think we can take life so seriously and it all becomes rather intense and overwhelming. So make time for playing.
Love it. Love it. And what's your reason to love sober today?
It is the clarity and the consciousness that I've gained, and sometimes it is hard and it's difficult and it can feel overwhelming, but actually it's where growth lies. I feel like particularly in the last year, I've been able to step outside of my own life and look in at it and see what's going on and work out what I need to do and how I need to handle things. And I didn't, there's no way I had any of that understanding when I was drinking. So forever grateful for that.
A gift. It is a gift. It is the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it? And thank you so much for coming on. And I hope that people listening in get that sense of just, it's things as they are being okay. It's like the whole thing about being sober is so much better than when you're stuck in the drinking cycle. It's not a panacea for, so that expectation that everything's going to be brilliant, that we can put on ourselves. We know life is impactful, and it's kind of supposed to be, is what I'm picking up as well. There's some kind of wisdom in that, that and hope that we will go through, if we have an idea of those cycles, the transitions, the fact that we will end up in no man's lands sometimes. And but it's okay, right? We can reach out, we can connect, and we have some tools now. That's what I'm sort of picking up from our conversation today.
And the strength we get from being sober and from feeling all the feelings is knowing that we can get through it. We're going to be all right. We can cope with it. We get blown about by the winds, but we can remain rooted and ride it out. But yeah, I just wanted to refer back to something that stuck with me from your podcast last week with Mandy, is that we can just stop driving for a while over winter and stop feeling like we have to achieve or have to improve or have to keep pushing ourselves. It's just to let go. That's what I want to do over this winter break.
Whatever we can, we can let go of.
And just be in the moment and just soak up some Christmas love. And come back stronger in the new year.
That's it. And I suppose it's that and real lives and real pressures mean that we do have to keep going anyway in certain areas, but wherever possible, to find, like you said, to be really mindful and turn towards those moments, and then give ourselves permission to cut ourselves slack as much as we possibly can.
I'm going to journal about that, actually. Like, what do I want to let go of from 2021, and what do I want to take into 2022?
Lovely.
It's been lovely chatting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And if you're immediately concerned about your drinking, just reach out, send up a flare, hello@lovesober.com. You can find Nancy at Sober Loving Radical. She's on TikTok, she's on Instagram. She does amazing dance moves, sparkly, glittery, just so creative. It's brilliant. They make me smile seeing all your when you post on there. It's brilliantly creative. And just reach out to one of the other sober forums. Just know you're not alone. And we'll send lots of love, and we will see you next week for more chat.